Greetings, my name's Andrew Sumner. My grandfather, Pop Smythe, bought me my first comic book in Liverpool, England, when I was 3 years old, and I spent the next 50 years hurtling around the pop culture kaleidoscope, first as a fan, and then as a journalist, editor, publisher and presenter. Along the way, I met a bunch of interesting people who will be joining me here, creators, performers, professionals and public servants. We live in divisive, fractured times, but art and popular culture connect people from all viewpoints and from all walks of life. I'm often struck by the passions people enjoy, that they can set aside their differences for and agree on whatever those passions are, whether I share them or not. And that spark, that moment of instinctive, connective agreement, that's what I call a hard agree.
Quite right. It's lovely to see you.
Oh, it's lovely to see you too, mate. That was a brilliantly impromptu piece of accidentally dining together that we enjoyed. That was great. That was a really great afternoon.
It was amazing. I think Tom Booton, I reckon, is one of the greatest chefs, full stop. And I think we've yet to see the half of him. He's 28 years old, creating dishes that are that good with that much charisma and wisdom, and just the way he engaged with everybody, walking around the tables on top of the Dorchester on that roof. I just couldn't help but think, what a star. And I think the future will be absolutely full of him.
I couldn't agree more. I was so tremendously impressed with him and his demeanour and his high levels of interactivity. And that was on top of being wowed by the food. I hadn't seen him when he'd joined you guys on TV. So at first, this is only an internal mistake. It wasn't externally expressed. I just thought he was like, the head waiter or something, and that's an amazing job in and of itself, right? It's a very cool job. But I earlier, what I was very impressed by, as a result of that, I asked him for a clean knife and fork within about half an hour of being there when he was walking around. And he just went and got it and gave it to me. And then 2/3 of the way through, I thought, oh, holy fuck, this guy's the head chef.
The head chef at the Dorchester Grill. And so much humility, though, just to say, yeah, no problem, I'll get you a knife and fork. Yeah, I love him. I think he's, absolute ledge.
I was very, very impressed with him, mate. Very impressed with him. It was amazing. And how have you been since we last met?
Been really well, actually. Been absolutely roaring along. I've been working on a book, which is the deadline has sailed by, and I'm current. There's just, if you could see the desk in front of me, it's just strewn with paper and flavour wheels and exotic ideas. I have finished it, but I've just got to do those. It's always those loose ends where the editor says, "Oh, can you just finish this? Could you just tie that up? And did you really mean martini glass here?" And all of those questions. So I've been really kind of hard at it with that, and actually doing lots of filming as well. I've just been up in Edinburgh filming something, and then doing lots of studio work, which is great. And the podcast, we've got to talk about the world of podcasts.
Oh, of course, yeah, it goes without saying. And to digress for a second, welcome to Hard Agree. I'm Andrew Sumner, and I'm privileged to be joined by the one, the only Olly Smith, the UK's foremost wine broadcaster, a national favourite, a man who is not only my mother's favourite TV presenter, but is my best friend's favourite TV presenter at the same time. It's a man who's all over the place when it comes to good food, good wine, and just personifying positivity. I think that's something that you do extremely well, mate.
Andrew, what an introduction. I mean, that's so generous of you. And I've got to immediately say hello to your mum. I mean, that's just, and your best mates, that just means so much. And I think the thing about wine, I've always felt there is always a flavour and always a moment that is available to everybody. There's a price that can be achieved. There's a kind of a way to get it in front of you. And for me, it's always led to having a good time. So that's really kind of, I suppose, the baseline of where my jollity has always come from, is the fact that I love it and I want as many people as possible to just enjoy it the way I kind of feel it's possible to do.
I mean, you're a classic example, I think. You're a great example of, obviously in the course of the journalistic life that I've had, I've met very many famous people. And you, of course, when you're in the business of interviewing people with fame and celebrity, you get a very variable experience. And I'm by nature a positivist, as you know. But the thing with you is, I think you're in the upper 2% of people who really, really walk the walk in terms of the persona you project on screen is the person that you are. And it's a glorious thing to encounter and to witness. As we were just saying, you and I ended up having lunch by accident for a lovely afternoon in central London a couple of weeks ago. And I was just sitting there as we were chatting thinking, man, this guy's the real deal. You know?
That's so sweet of you. And I think that's half the sort of ticket, though, in life, isn't it? If you have two rails you've got to keep jumping between, a persona and kind of your real self, you're just going to end up being confused and miserable either way. So I've always just thought, just be who you are, you know, I once had this great phrase that I really liked, actually, which was do what you can where you are with what you've got. And I just think, that's absolutely magnificent. You don't have to do anything extra. You just have to kind of be what you are in that moment. And it was lovely to meet you and Sumner, that lunch you just mentioned. I was out with Matt Tebbutt, and, you know, we were kind of enjoying the most delicious food, and it turns out great company because you were there. And it was a barrel of laughs. And I think that's what food and drink should be. It should never be kind of a way away from each other. It should always bring people together, and tables interacting, talking together and getting to know each other is exactly what the game is all about.
Yeah, right on. Amen, brother. I couldn't agree more. I'd like to. Oh, don't worry, man.
Alarm pinging. I'm so sorry. Somebody wants me. That's always going to be a good thing. I'm so sorry.
It's always a good sign. Always a good sign to have the alarm pinging.
No, I think it's for you. I think it's literally in case I was late for this podcast. Yeah. So there we are. I'm on the show already.
Well, I very much appreciate that. Not only are you here, mate, you're early. Can we just roll back a bit? I'm interested in talking about your early years for a second, because you went to Charterhouse, right, on a music scholarship.
That's true.
Now, Charterhouse, funnily enough, has a long-term relationship with music, not just the kind we're going to talk to, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that is the school that the guys from Genesis went to.
You're absolutely right. And in fact, one fine day, a long time ago, I remember I was asked to show somebody round, and I realised about halfway through the kind of showing this person around the school that it was Mike Rutherford of Genesis. And
tall Mike Rutherford.
I think he's the guitarist, isn't he? And he was a delightful fellow. And I was kind of there showing him around, and I suddenly realised, of course, he'd been to school there. So I was sort of saying, over here, this is where we walk to school. He's like, yes, I remember it well. And he's like, oh, right, okay. But yeah, it was a musical school, and I did get a music scholarship there, and I kind of had an unlikely sort of journey in music. My dad was a music teacher, actually, growing up, and mum was a nurse. And, my kind of upbringing I was very lucky. I had two, very gorgeous parents who are still sort of kicking around. And music was always there. It was always kind of filling the house. And I loved singing. So my kind of first break, actually, I was really into choral music, which is so unlikely, but a true story. And I used to listen to records of it. I loved it. And I won a choral scholarship to King's College, Cambridge as a kid. So I went off and did my singing there, and then went on to Charterhouse again on another music scholarship, and learnt the French horn and the piano and the organ. I mean, it was an extraordinary opportunity. But what I quickly realised was that music was a kind of gateway into all of the arts, and I loved the theatre, I loved literature, I loved poetry, and I realised that actually, like everything that I love in life, it's just all about meeting people and doing things together. And that was where I really kind of found my flourishing, if you like, because I wasn't terribly good at sport. I mean, I won't come as a surprise to those who know me, but I kind of waddle around the place, smiling. But I wasn't a brilliant kind of sports person. But I did love activities that you could do together, whether it was singing or being in an orchestra or whatever it was. So I felt really fortunate to have those opportunities, and then really to learn how to communicate, I suppose, off the back of that, how to express and not feel kind of too worried about getting it wrong, because we're all human, right? Everyone there's no wrong or no right. We're just doing what we do.
Of course. And I'm going to ask you a very technical question about your music. And the only reason I'm asking you this is not because this is something I care about personally. It is a question, however, that my dad will ask me once he listens to this and he knows about your music background. Oh, yeah. So I also come from a very musical family. But one of my dad's obsessions is what level of musical grade you've got to in what particular discipline.
Yes, I can answer that. Do you want to know?
I would love to. So, well, my Ken Sumner, my father, would love to know.
So Ken, I can say that on the probably the highest one was the French horn, when I did get to grade 8 with distinction, which is the kind of the last of the exams. And I did work hard to do that. And then to my shame, Ken, I don't really play the French horn now, and that's awful, because I just really should. I love it. It's just like everything in life. You become a father, you get busy at work, and these things. There's one somewhere, knocking around, and I really should get it out and have a tootle because I love it. And the sound the French horn makes, it's a weird one because it's kind of mournful at the same time as being quite exuberant. You know, it can express this great joy. You know, the Mozart horn concertos are really joyful, but it can be really sad and really reflective. And what was Ken's instrument? Was he a musician himself?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was. He three things like yourself. He sings a bit, which nice. I also do. He plays trombone, but his main thing is he was a big band drummer. So
wow,
by day he was a bank manager, but big band. I just love. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Bert Kaempfert's orchestra. You know, back in the day.
Me too. Superb. Yeah. You know, Bye Bye Blues is one of my favourite all-time recordings. It's just got such light and dark with the brass section and what Bert Kaempfert. Those of you who haven't heard Bert Kaempfert, basically, if you imagine kind of a sort of jazzy orchestra, but kind of some people might say lift music, but it's not lift music at all. Yeah. It's lift music in the best possible way. But he always has this bed of quite often he uses choral sounds, and it's so warm, just hanging around in the background, people oohing and ahhing, and I think, this is tremendous. It's almost like somebody just hasn't skimped on the extra cream with my Black Forest Gatto. That's a great thing in life.
There's a very famous Barenaked Ladies lyric which goes, Bert Kaempfert's got the mad hits.
Mad hits. Yeah, I remember that. Do you remember they were very, If I Had $1 Million, what a song that was. That was a toe tapper.
Superb song. Absolutely superb song.
Yeah, cracking music.
They always deliver live, those guys.
I've never seen them. Have you seen them a few times?
Yeah, I've seen them many times actually, mate. And once when I was working on the NME, this is near the beginning of their career, they came to the Stamford Arms, which is the pub around the corner from IPC, from Kingsreach Tower, loaded the anime where all used to be based. And they came to the upstairs of the Stamford Arms, and they played like an impromptu show for all the journalists.
Incredible.
But I've seen them many times since then, and they if you ever get the chance, you must go because they are phenomenal live.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant.
I think my brother Will's seen them a few times and says the similar sort of thing, that they're just epic. And you know, I remember, the first live band I ever saw was Marillion in about 1987, 1988, the Clutching at Straws tour and the Gloucester Hall in Jersey. I mean, Fish, I love him. I still love him. I think he's a great lyricist. And but, you know, if you're not into prog rock, you're never going to get Marillion. But I did at the time. I just loved what they were doing because it was just, I think it was quite characterful, offbeat. As a live band, though, and I was probably only about 13 years old, it just hit the wall of sound effect. It really was like hearing that first moment, the experience of sound just going through your guts and up through your shoulders and out through your head. It was just absolutely staggering. I loved it.
Well,
gig.
It's under super theatricality, and of course, with the great prog bands, and you got a lot of this with Genesis. Even when the sound became much more mainstream, you go see them live. I went to see them live a few times. Went to see Rush live a few times. And what you get with all of them is this all-encompassing. It's like going to see rock music, which has been interbred with pantomime.
That's a brilliant way of putting it.
But it's all consuming, and it really gets you, as you say, in the viscera. You really feel it.
It's a show. You're absolutely right. And there are some artists that I have never seen live and won't get the chance to, like George Harrison. I'm a mega fan of George Harrison, and I kind of, when I listen to his music, I sort of think he gets that carnival theatrical feel, and his lyrics are very intimate as well. But depending on the album and the era, you know, you're either going to get something quite sort of sparse or that, you know, famous wall of sound that I touched on. You know, I actually called Marillion's wall of sound. I think George might be a bit annoyed by that. But I kind of think he has that same sense of epic scale. He delivers that, you know, even in his albums. And that's one artist I would absolutely love to have seen live. Did you ever see him by any chance?
Sadly not. Sadly, I'm in the same boat as yourself. I would have absolutely loved to have done. I would have loved to have got close. And it was one of those things that if I could go back in a time machine, the moments when I chose to do something else instead, I would, of course, you know, have made a different decision. But this is the thing about the great artists. You know, you never know who's going to abide and who's going to be there. You're
so right. And one of the, I mean, I would say it probably is the finest gig I've ever seen, was Iggy Pop at the Albert Hall on the post-pop depression tour. And it was one of those nights where It had sold out. I managed to get a ticket, grabbed a friend of mine. We went. And at the time, I didn't realize it was being filmed. But now you can watch it back and it is still just, I mean, his performance is exceptional. But the super band, Josh Homme and all the other guys, I have never experienced such a tight performance as that. And Iggy, I don't know what age he is, but I'm guessing late 60s, if not, further than that, leaping around stage diving, showing us all how to live at the top of his lungs. I was so inspired by that. And every time I think about it, I do still get the tingling, visceral feeling of, I just can't believe I was there. I cannot believe I was there. It was absolutely mind blowing.
Well, live music at its best, of course, it is exactly that. It's a transformative experience, and as great it is to listen to music, great it is to listen to Spotify, as great it is to listen to analog music, and it really is, and it is a much more powerful emotional experience than, listening to an MP3. It's lovely to listen to vinyl, but wherever you go in life, it's like when we're at the Dorchester, the minute you hear live music in the background, it's live. The whole way your body processes that is different. And when you're seeing greatness, it's a transformative experience.
It's so true. And, behaviorally, we react on, I don't know if you could describe it as vibrations, but we kind of pick up on each other's vibes, let's say that. And certainly on the roof of the Dorchester, when that live band started playing, there was just a couple of them, but they were really good. And they lifted that mood, and it was kind of blowing quite a hoolie on the day. But everything in my memory of that just felt absolutely phenomenal and at ease and lovely. And that's the power of great music. Obviously, we were, treated to amazing food as well. But you're so right about that sort of sense of something else in the live show. Tom Petty was another one I saw. And he was, again, he was fairly advanced in years when I saw him. And I remember at the time looking at him on the stage, and I could have sworn there was kind of a glow behind his eyes, whether it was just a trick of the light, but it seemed somehow that the person was magnified and that the spirit filled the room. It was absolutely sublime.
Yeah, that is a real hard degree for me. I think that's amazing when you have those experiences. I once walked into the Blue Note Jazz Club in the one that's in Honolulu in Hawaii, right? And an amazing place. And I was privileged to be.
Amazing! How cool is this?
Oh, it was great. And there's a guy called Jake Shakamura was on there, and I didn't know this guy. And he was a ukulele player, right? He is a ukulele player, and I was like, oh, this is not really my top choice for what I would see. I was really rather hoping one of the jazz greats would be on, but man, I'm going to sit down and watch it. But it turns out that this guy is essentially the Jimi Hendrix of the, and so he loops his ukulele, and he just does a one-man performance, the most incredibly complex rock rhythms on a ukulele, and it's just jaw-dropping.
I think you're right. The uke is capable of great things, no doubt about that. And it's wonderful to discover the unlikely in that way, and to realize it's just in the hands of a great artist. You can be totally, moved. And Eddie Vedder's album, he's got, what's it called, Ukulele Songs or something, but it's a phenomenal record. Yeah. I hung out for just so long on Discogs waiting for it to pop up on the original pressing, because there's so few of them, and I managed to get it. And it's one of those great treasures in my requord collection, because it was Olivia Harrison, who I don't know personally, but I follow on Instagram, and she was talking about this great album, and I thought, hang on, I quite like Eddie Vedder, I don't know much about this, so I downloaded it as you do and thought, oh no, this is a vinyl, this has to be, and went on my magic quest, and it's such a prize. What an album.
And you touched upon something which is a beautiful thing about life, I think, the quest. And the thing about the quest for information, the quest for creative information, whether it's books, whether it's music, I think it's an experience that's largely denied to, say, my kids are both adults, and they live in the instant generation of everything is readily accessible at the click of a finger. Everything is in the ether. And don't get me wrong, there's a great deal of beauty about that, I think. And the fact that you've essentially got the British Library at your fingertips wherever you go, and you can answer any question immediately is amazing. But the beauty of the quest is what kind of gets lost.
Yes, and funnily enough, this was something that I used to love with my older brother Will. When we were waiting for a movie, we would just eke out any magazine clipping, any appearance on TV, any hint we could get to research and kind of piece together the cast, maybe the locations, and it would just be months of anticipation that would finally build into this great, an extravaganza of actually going to the cinema and seeing, Raiders of the Lost Ark or Empire Strikes Back or Time Bandits It's all, don't laugh, Condorman, a great movie. But anyway, we became, it was part of the experience. And now you get all those teaser trailers dripped out, and you're right, it is so immediate and everything is accessible. The Quest is something beautiful, and that does trickle into the world of wine. There are sort of historic bottles and, iconic things that you can look for, but it doesn't really matter what the discipline is or what kind of the Quest is. The Quest is of itself such fun, and it kind of changes you. It is like going on a proper quest. That's what it does. You find out more, you develop, you become intrigued in other little diversions along the way. The Quest, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
And this is why the Quest abides throughout human storytelling, throughout history.
True.
As you read Mallory, it's all about the Quest. Yeah. Even some early religious writings, they're all about the Quest, and it echoes throughout eternity. For that reason, it's a fundamental part of the human experience, which I think is. You've mentioned something that I just want to touch upon, which is Condorman.
Yeah, I love that movie.
So not only have I seen Condorman, Mike Rutherford delivering the quality way before the era of superhero movies.
I know, right?
I was almost killed by that film.
What?
The scenario was, so I'm born and raised on Merseyside. My brother is about 8 years older than me. My brother used to be the publisher of Wallpaper magazine, which you're probably familiar with.
Yeah, indeed.
Well-known aesthetes magazine. But this is Neil Sumner aged 10, right? And Andrew Sumner, aged 18, has recently learned how to drive. And he's driving Neil to the Unit 4 cinema in Wallasey on the other side of the Merseys from Liverpool, which is the only place that's playing Condorman. And we ended up driving through Merseyside, through a very treacherous part of the Wirral called Barnston Dip, which I'd never driven down before. And it's basically a hairpin bend that goes over a ravine. But it was heavy sleeting rain. Oh no. And I drove into the hairpin bend, and I was driving maybe 30 miles an hour, which was 20 miles an hour too fast for those conditions. And I was in my mum's canvas-topped Fiat 127, and I drove into the bend, straightened out the car, but the car straightened out the wheel, but the car kept on going into the bend, and the car rolled. No. Yeah, it's completely rolled. The top of the car got torn off. It hit an antique wall and knocked it down into the ravine. But the impact stopped us going into the ravine, threw us back into the main road, where we came to rest on the driver's side. So my face was touching the shattered window next to me. And we weren't wearing seatbelts, right? It's 1982. So my 10-year-old brother is lying on top of me. And we literally just got up and walked out of the torn-off roof.
Oh, you're so lucky.
Like Elwood and Jake and the Blues Brothers. And as we were dusting ourselves off, a car came round from the other direction at about 60 miles an hour, hit the Fiat 127, which then just turned into a ball of metal. Literally, if we'd been wearing seatbelts, we'd have been dead.
That's extraordinary. Yeah. What a serendipitous moment, and how unlikely that not wearing seatbelts actually seems to have had a positive effect.
I know, it was one of those 10,000 to one shot deals of we wouldn't have actually survived if we'd had the seatbelts on. We wouldn't have got out the car in time.
You must have been so shaken up for ages.
Yeah, it's so funny, and it's one of those things. Not really. I was almost completely disconnected from it. I mean, when we were on our way to the local hospital in an ambulance, and literally the only injury we got is I got a sprained ankle. That was it.
Wow.
My face was slightly grazed where it hit the ground. My brother was absolutely fine.
That's incredible.
The most of our conversation was, when do you think we're going to be able to get to see Condorman?
Do you know, I think I have somewhere behind me, and probably not, but here. I've got an original press brochure from Condorman. That was a quest.
Superb, mate.
So for those of you in the podcast not able to see this, I'm currently holding up the full colour deluxe posters and accessories version. It was the press, I think the press were given this when they went and saw Condorman at the premiere, but I have the original mag right here in my little office. I'm in my garden pods. But when did you get to see it? That's the question.
About a month later. So there was a bit of an episode at home because I rang my dad, and he was at some Rotary Club lunch, and I was like, Dad, before I say anything else, we're both fine. We're at the hospital. We'll have to get. And
the car is
the
gone.
Usual stuff. And it was fine. Everything was fine until my mum and dad were pretty calm until my dad took my mum to the garage to see the car, and because they'd both seen us and we were okay. But when my mum saw the car, it literally looked like it being in a trash compactor. You'd look at this and go, well, there's no way the people in this accident could have survived.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those weird things. You see cars that have a dent on them and everyone inside the car is no longer alive, right? Because the impact. But this car, when you looked at the remnants of my mum's fear, you think there's no way anybody's lived, but we were just tremendously lucky. So that there was a high level of family-based upset after that event. So,
Condorman in your case is just it's kind of a totemic symbol of life.
Right.
But what an extraordinary movie it is. I mean, I think as far as genres go, it covers pretty much everything. It's comedy, action, adventure, spy, romance. And in many ways, it doesn't really work at all. But in other ways, if you're watching it as a kid, it's just a romp. And I look at the superhero movies now and think, yeah, they had it down. Reboot Condorman, Disney. What are you waiting for? Yeah. How is it that you've got the property? You can make it good. You've got the Falcon in the Marvel Adventures. Come on, Condorman's not that far off. Surely you could be his godfather or something.
Absolutely. The middle ground between the Falcon and the Phantom of the Opera is Condorman.
Right? The Falcon and the Phantom. I love it. Oh, yeah.
So, mate, to flip back to you've studied your music, and you ultimately you got a degree in English literature, right, mate?
I did, yeah.
Same as myself.
Nice.
So what was your journey from that point to becoming the wine connoisseur expert and presenter?
It's such a good question, and it's a sort of unlikely story, really, in many ways. But I'd studied English literature at university in Edinburgh, and while I was there, I had a job at the Cameo Cinema for many years, where I kind of graduated from serving popcorn to tickets and got to know the bar guy really well, Ian Hoey, who's still a great mate of mine. Actually, he's a fantastic bloke. And during that time, I was kind of like, I remember I was interested for some reason. I don't know the precise reason why. I was interested in wine. I just really wanted to find out more. And I remember going into I think it was an Odd Bins, and just trying it and thinking, God, for like £3 you can get a pretty decent glug of something here. This sounds a lot like fun. And it was at the time when, Aussie wine was just coming in and it was feeling a little more down to earth. So I got myself another job working at Orange and Company Vintners. And that was really the transformative experience. That was kind of in the holidays. And I used to lift boxes and deliver them. That was my job. Yeah. So I would look at them and read them and realize that I didn't know anything about what anything meant. Like Rioja. What is that? And then, guy in the basement would say to me, it's Rioja. You'd be like, oh yeah, Rioja, right. Well, what's that then? And he would explain it's a place and the grapes that go into it, taste like this. And I was really fascinated. It was kind of like going back to the quest, actually. I was fascinated by the idea that there was this hidden world with lots of different terminology and lots of different languages sort of surrounding it. And then a kind of veneer of this isn't for everybody sort of hanging over the front of it. And that felt really like bit wrong to me. I thought, surely if it's that good, it should be all for wine and wine for all. So I made it my mission to kind of go out there, and celebrate and talk about wine. And I got completely kind of hooked on the idea that, wine should be democratized for all. And that, it was fun rather than kind of feeling like you were going to some sort of exam. Because I don't know if you agree, but it always felt like it was a bit austere and a bit buttoned up. And the years went by, and I sort of started writing scripts for film and TV, and I did a few for Pingu and Charlie and Lola, and spent a day working on Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit. But all the time I was like doing my little wine qualifications, loving it, boring all my screenwriting friends senseless with wine talk. And then this competition came along called Wine Idol, which nobody saw because it was like Pop Idol, but it was on a satellite channel and, in the distant realms of the Nethersphere. And I think it was about 6,000 people entered it, and I managed to win it. And the prize was amazing, because the prize was, it was supposedly a year's supply of wine. 72 bottles is a weekend. That's not a year. That's just cruel. But it was a lovely thing to win. And then it was an audition for a show called Great Food Live with Jenny Barnett. So I got the prize, I did my audition and managed to get on the show, and they kept booking me. And then eventually it turned into a bit of a roller coaster, and lots of people were seeing me saying, oh, this guy seems to know stuff. And also in a down-to-earth way, offering people, I sort of flipped around the recommendation So rather than saying this is the best wine in the world, you've got to have it, I'd ask people what they liked. What flavors are you into? What's your budget? Where do you want to shop? And then I'd just zero in on the perfect wine. And then they thought, oh, this is actually quite fun. It's like the 6 degrees of Bergerac or something. It's like everything's connected. So in the end, I was very lucky. I got the gig on Saturday Kitchen. It was the Rich and Judy Wine Club actually that led to that with the Cactus TV. And no, I'm forever grateful for that, because I've been on the show, I think 15 years now. 2007, I was definitely on it then, because I know my youngest child was born pretty much during the show or the night before on the kitchen floor. So yeah, it's been a really lovely, lovely journey to be on. And I still always go back to that idea that there is a wine out there waiting for everybody. And it's literally just a question of navigating through those hidden corners and helping people on the quest so they can find ultimately enjoyment. That really is what it's all about. And I want people from whatever walk of life, in whatever background, to be able to think, I'm going to give that a go. It's no different, in my opinion, to talking about movies or bands or food or anything in life. It's just knowing how to get in there. And once you've got the keys to the castle, it's brilliant. I just love it so much.
Mate, it's so wonderful to hear you talk about it. And I think the thing is, what I enjoy about watching you talk about wine is that what I get from you is tremendous authenticity, but real joy. And I think you're into the democratization of the whole thing. There's no mystique to it. Yeah. It's like, as you said, there's a wine for everybody. And, wine has brought me such a tremendous amount of enjoyment.
Yeah,
during my multiple decades on the face of the earth. I think you're always confronted when you're talking about it with the sheer joy of it all, which I just love to watch.
I'm so glad you say that. It just makes my heart warm, because really the nicest thing about the job is if you're actually in company with someone and they say, oh, could you give me a recommendation? I'm sure you get asked this all the time. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And I really love it. So yeah, far away. And then you give them a proper recommendation and then you get the feedback. It might take a week or two. And actually, this is one of the things I think is good about sort of the instant world, is that something like Instagram, I'll get people saying, what should I buy this weekend? And I'll say, I'll try this, Sure enough, a week or two later, most of the time people do come back and go, I really loved it. Thanks so much. It's just absolutely great to be able to try that. Would never have bought it. That is just all the job satisfaction in the world. It didn't, cost me anything to do. It's just a bit of knowledge, but it's given somebody something really joyful, and hopefully will lead them to go explore the world of great flavors. And whether it's wine or beer or soft drinks or good food, I don't really mind. Just, if there's just so much out there, and there's so many interesting people doing it as well. There's so many good authors of agriculture and great chefs and places. The architecture of some of these restaurants that I'm lucky enough to go to, that alone is like so inspiring. And I just always end up marveling, to be honest, at the creativity and industry of we humans. It's just quite remarkable. It really is.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, because restaurant. I think restaurant architecture is fascinating. I think architecture of public human spaces is a fascinating full thing. But they're like temples to human endeavour, really.
That's it. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of airports, and that sounds really unlikely.
Me too.
But looking at them, like you know, I live quite close to Gatwick, so I've got to be. I have a vague affection for Gatwick. But when you go to places like Barcelona Airport,
brilliantly put.
And you have these sweeping kind of beautiful. It's not so much. It's grand. It's just civic spaces. The idea that it's for people, for as many people as possible to feel good, and it's a huge statement. And I went the other day. I had lunch in the Wolseley. It's a wonderful London restaurant, and again, really lucky to go there. I love it. But that building, it was a car showroom, and you go in there and you think you are so right to use the word temple, because that's what it feels like. You walk in and think this wouldn't feel out of place as a throne room in Lord of the Rings. This could be Denethor's palace. It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's beautifully done. Something I love about you, mate, by the way, is when you're talking about this stuff, and where you're a fellow traveller, is you're always in touch with one of the things I've noticed. There is a regular conversational motif for you is, and I'm so lucky to be able to go to X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I do feel lucky.
That's absolutely right. I think recognising that fact.
Yeah.
If whatever it is that takes you into those kind of environments, to recognize that, just being in them is an incredibly, wonderful and positive and lucky thing to be able to experience. I love the fact that you're always so connected to that.
Thank you. I just think that all we should be doing is reaching out the door to all these places and just grabbing as many people as possible and saying, come and have a look. Yeah. Have a look. Isn't it incredible? It's just, I really do feel very fortunate. And I think the I was just walking through, London just the other day, just stopped and just looked up at this, Regent Street and just thought, and Edinburgh's another place I could talk to you for hours on end about. Every single corner is a view, it's laden with history. There's so many layers to it, literally and figuratively. But yes, all of these civic spaces, I think really the common mission has to be, just elevate each other and take one another by the hand and go on and have a great adventure in this span of time we have, and you did that for me, by the way, in your previous life. I don't know if you still are for Forbidden Planet, but I used to spend so long with my brother in it's that one just up from Covent Garden.
It's 179 Shaftesbury Avenue.
Perfect. Yes, that's exactly right. On the sort of north side of the street, and we used to press our noses against the outside, ogling the full size Predator figures and all of that, and then we'd sort of go there. And for us, it was like visiting. It felt like the behind the scenes tour of all the movies, and we'd save up and buy little bits and bobs, and we've still got loads of bits. In fact, I'm not sure if I did buy this there, but I've got a Roger Moore Spy Who Loved Me Action Man. Yeah, which may well have come from your haunts years and years ago. It was a re-edition, I think. But I just love that that curated sense of magic that Forbidden Planet has. It's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
Oh no, it really does. It is a temple in and of itself. It's just opened as we speak. It's been open for about 2 weeks. After an extensive London lockdown. So, the temple is open for business once more.
I'll be back. Try and stop me.
Always good to meet a dedicated customer. And to just examine the civic spaces thing, I've been very lucky, I think, because I grew up in a city, Liverpool, which has beautiful architecture. And I've spent a long time living in another city, London, which has beautiful architecture. And you're absolutely right. It's very easy to walk around cities of this nature, and Edinburgh, your name check would be another one. And you're so focused on your daily business, you don't take the time to step back and just look up. My friends and I, all of whom are other magazine type guys, we had a bit of a reunion lunch the other day at Bentley's. Yeah,
lovely,
and such a lovely place.
What a laugh!
Such great food there as well. It's so, it's so amazing. But as we were walking along, we walked past Veeraswamy or whatever. We had one of those moments where it's like everybody just stopped and looked up. Which it's so easy not to do. And, with
True.
London, there's such amazing sights you miss if you're too focused on the pavement.
Yeah, I think see it through the eyes of a tourist. And I'd say not just for cities, but for your everyday life. Just imagine it's the first time you're seeing it. Because it's there's the high and the low in life, but it is all there on display. However, there is just it always blows me away. Rome's another one where I kind of look at it and think it's just every single detail either has been, slightly eroded and weathered, or carefully kind of crafted to sort of weave around that. And it's such a sort of a woven tapestry of centuries of human existence, and it's right there in front of you. And as you say, if you're kind of too busy reading the map as you go around, just throw the map away, just have a look, and then ideally sit down and have a massive pizza and never leave.
Exactly. I really could not agree more. So you touched upon Saturday Kitchen, and you've been through many incarnations of that show and delivered the quality throughout those incarnations. But it seems to me, and I can tell, having seen you guys off camera, that you have such great friendship chemistry with Matt Tebbutt.
I
love
love
that
Matt.
for a bit.
Yeah, happy to. I've always got on so well with Matt. We filmed the pilot together that never got made with Jimmy Doherty, actually, a very long time ago. I mean, might even have been, early 2000s. I can't remember the exact date, but we became very good friends off the back of that, and never worked together, but always kind of hung out and liked talking about food and drink, especially. And the thing I've always enjoyed about Matt in company or whether he's at work is he's so inclusive. It's there for everybody, and he wants to talk and he wants to have fun and he wants to listen and share stories. And that, I think, is that's probably the characteristic we both enjoy most about one another. There's nothing he could say about food that I wouldn't find fascinating. He always surprises me. His recipes are great, but he's genuinely one of those people who's always he's always got a tale to tell and is always inquiring. There's always another thing he wants to find out. So yeah, he's very, very warm-hearted. And as you saw at the lunch, anybody who wants to say hello to him, he couldn't be more open-handed. So we've always had the most lovely, lovely times together. And to be able to see, I hadn't seen him in over a year, actually. So that was the first time. Yeah, because of the extraordinary year we just had. And obviously we've been working together. But to be back at a table with someone who, you're very fond of, it's just like a river of golden syrup through the soul. It's just like, I feel like really luxuriant and bathing in good things, and just life could not be better. Yeah, no, he's a bit of a ledge, is old Matt. Or young Matt, I should say. Yeah,
young Matt. Amen to that, brother. I think the inquiring mind aspect of your friendship is the thing I found to be particularly impressive, because, here's the thing, it's very easy when you're in the public eye, and therefore people ask you about yourself a lot. And I've been that guy asking those questions anonymously for decades, But when you're in any situation, people come up to you and recognize you want to talk. I always think the mark of somebody who's, a truly valuable human being are the people who ask questions and don't just answer them, That's clearly your mutual style. Both of you are very much cut from that cloth.
Yeah, I love finding out about, stuff and what makes you tick. And like, as soon as you started talking about Forbidden Planet, I was climbing up your trouser leg. I didn't get enough of it. It's like, hang on a minute, this is amazing. Can I get for the Predator? Can I? No, but it's exactly that. It's just really good fun. And we're all just full of stories. We've all got our unique journeys we've been on. Yeah. And for me, it's just finding... it's part of it is obviously finding out where you connect and where you can kind of find common ground. And it's the opposite as well. It's like, well, what don't I know? What would I like to find out about you that is unfamiliar to me? That's a huge part, I think, of the inquiring part. I'm genuinely fascinated by how extraordinary the possibilities are for life on this planet. And to kind of have the chance to find out someone else's, experience over a glass or two it's a peachy thing. It's just great.
Yeah, no, it's really lovely. And one of your great expressions of that, of course, has been your very successful podcast series, A Glass With, which anybody listening to this can find a link to in the show notes to this episode. But you've had some amazing guests on that show. Can you tell me about the genesis of it, how it came together for you?
Yeah, totally. It was, funny enough, it was an idea that came to me via a guy called Richard Hemming, who's a great friend in the wine trade, who was he wanted somebody to host it. It was kind of the format was there. You have a glass of something with somebody of note. And so it's a fairly simple format. It's a beguilingly simple format, in fact. Yeah. But what I kind of discovered quite early on in the show is that one or two glasses in, people really relax, and I've had Pink on the show. I've had Sting and Sam Neill and some Dawn French, Miriam Margolyes. There's been some wonderful characters. And it's just so true that this is what, as people, one glass in, the stories start flowing, you feel like you know each other a bit better. And it's really fun for me to kind of then listen back to the show. And, while it gets edited a little bit, you do get that sense of progression. And I had a brilliant one recently with Gennaro Contaldo. And he's so full of life. He's the guy who drinks from the very font of the top of Mount Olympus every morning and then just jogs down and spreads goodwill around the planet. He's a legend. But he was I absolutely loved the wine that we were drinking and got through quite a few glasses of it, as you'll hear if you listen to the show. Tom Booton, actually, the head chef at the Dorchester Grill, I've just done him as well. And he was another one, a few glasses in, starts talking about his, extraordinarily hard years as a 15-year-old leaving school, working in kitchens. And then you flash forward to where he is now at the Dorchester, and it's fascinating. And I just think a glass of wine with a great conversation. Yeah, I love it. And podcasting, as you well know, it's such an informal, accessible, easy thing to kind of, it's great that we can kind of reach ever deeper, I think, with it, is what I'm getting to. It feels a wonderful medium to me. I love it. Oh no, it's phenomenal. I mean, and it's the simplicity of the concept, I think, that always works. Because and that's the beauty of A Glass With. It is such a simple concept, but it just leads to so many interesting conversations. Yeah. I think wine does that. And we've had some teetotals on the show. We've done beer on the show, spirits. I had Gareth Malone the other day, and I found out he was a massive whiskey fan. So we drank Lay Chick 18-year-old whiskey, which if you're a whiskey fan, it's one of those whiskeys I've never tasted. I thought, I'm going to find a really interesting one made by the Tobermory Distillery. And it's just an endless kind of firecrackle of spices as you've sipped it afterwards. It just keeps going like, popping candy almost on the tongue. It's a living drink. And I was just so thrilled to be able to have a conversation. I never knew Gareth was into whiskey, just had no idea. And he wanted to refer back to that. And of course, we covered off his music and everything else. But it was an insight into the guy that it's just his private passion. He just really enjoys a dram, has a little collection, just doesn't treat it that seriously. But he's got great knowledge. And that's the other thing you find out on these shows is the kind of the other thing people do, in addition to their kind of what they're known for. Most people have got a few hobbies or a few passions in life. And that, I think, is almost more interesting, And I remember, I think it was Sting talking about swimming in lakes, and you just never imagine, It's like, I really just really enjoy swimming, freshwater swimming. Never would have known, how lovely, tell me more. And it's just that innocent sort of beguiling chat down the ways less trodden that just feels great.
Oh, yeah, no, it's wonderful, mate. Touching upon celebrities, and somebody I would love to hear you chat with on a glass with, but that's no longer possible. But somebody who's a big mate of yours was Roger Moore. So I'd love to hear about that friendship and also the project you worked on together, which I think I love.
Yes, I mean, funnily enough, we're recording this the day after the anniversary of his death, actually. Yeah. And so yesterday, it's in my diary, it's Roger Moore Day, which is always a national holiday in my house, and similarly his birthday as well. So I get 2 extra holidays a year. But in truth, meeting him, I was working on a project with a friend doing sort of animation scripts, and Roger had a kind of a heart episode on stage in New York and wasn't well and was in hospital. And I was panicking that he might actually die without having met me. So my friend Dan Chambers made a little cartoon called Sir Roger Moore's Requiem, which basically showed what would happen to Sir Roger Moore's soul if he carked it, before he'd met me. It's this kind of terrible kind of thing. And it was actually just such a funny thing set to Verdi's Requiem. And Rog, by a complete coincidence, within a few days, it hit the internet, and he'd seen it on his hospital bed in New York, and apparently he was tickled pink. So via his kind of assistant and a number of different connections, we got a message to him saying, look, get well soon, mate. And if we can ever do anything for your work with UNICEF, maybe we could do an animation script, or we could shoot a pilot, whatever you need, just count us in. And to our great amazement, he replied saying, yeah, I'm back in Monte Carlo in a few days. I'm not going to be in London. So unless you want to come out and see me there, might take a while. And we're like, well, we'd love to come and see you there. So flash forward just a few weeks, and we were in Monte Carlo with a shooting script for an idea for UNICEF to promote for their Christmas campaign called The Fly Who Loved Me, in which Rog played Father Christmas and I played the fly, which did good things for them. And it was just so incredible going to meet him, having all of the terror that you would normally have for meeting your hero in case they don't live up to it. And then finding him just so down to earth and so utterly disarmingly real is the word I would use, and so warm and deeply funny and very concerned for the well-being of others. So that was the thing. Straight away through the door, he was talking about low sodium in diets and goiter and education for girls around the world being of paramount importance, that he was desperately worried about the situation. I think it was in Afghanistan at the time where girls weren't getting an education in the way that he would hope they would. So it really struck me off the bat that he wasn't just in it for the jollies. He was in it because he was a really deep thinking, gorgeous person. And so we recorded the script and had a good time and stayed in touch. And then, every now and again we just have lunch and hang out. And we in those days we used to speak on Skype. We're on Zoom these days. It's all very modern. But I remember I was on Skype with him once, and one of my kids, I know it can't have been more than 4 or 5 at the time, one of the girls just totted in the background and just asked, is that James Bond? And I'm like, yes, top secret mission. And Roger, of course, playing along, top secret, all the rest of it, and just having a chat, with 007. And I really had all the time in the world for him. I remember once he was doing a performance at the British Library of Rudyard Kipling's If, I think it was, and popped in earlier on with my brother to say hi, and found, he asked us for notes. He was rehearsing and he said, give me notes. And we're like, this is ridiculous. This is our childhood Bond. And he's asking us for notes on how he should do. And he was just perfect in the performance, as of course he would be. But he just always had time for everybody. And he was somebody who had any, if there's any fan of his listening, I can just reassure you that you would have been everything you'd hoped and far more. And I think there's that phrase, never meet your heroes. I actually think flip it, you should totally meet them. And if they don't live up to the expectation, then they were never your heroes in the first place.
Yeah.
But he became my hero for not his acting, and although I do love his work, Man Who Haunted Himself and Wild Geese and
Wow, great.
Hijack,
Yeah, for sure.
amazing. But it was because he was a good person. He was just a kind person, and that just carried so much water with me. I do miss him. It's really, whenever I think of him, I always feel warm and glad that I got to know him a little bit. But just really, he was such a good force, and the world needs more of that right now.
I couldn't agree more. And how wonderful to be able to have and sustain a friendship with one of your great heroes like that. I mean, it must feel in the moment like a kind of snap yourself moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and some quite intimate times, past, and some sad moments. I remember the day Richard Keel sadly died, as you do, you send your best and say sorry to hear that and hope you're okay. And Roger was absolutely grief-stricken and just, I had an all caps lock email back, and he was clearly very, very moved and very sad. But, to be part of that small moment, it's a big moment. Obviously, Richard Keel was Jaws in the Bond films. And again, I was unfortunate to meet him. He was also quite interesting. So I found myself once having lunch, right, in real life. If there's any Bond fans listening, if you remember Moonraker, Jaws had a girlfriend called Dolly, who was played by Blanche Ravalac.
Right on.
And I was having lunch, sat between Richard Keel and Blanche Ravalac, literally thinking, this cannot be happening in real life. I've stepped through the looking glass. And again, they could not have been more genial and charming and just super kind about the whole thing. But yeah, the whole kind of being able to meet somebody whose work you've really valued and then realize, they've got so much to offer. It meant a lot to me, really, and it still does.
How absolutely wonderful. I think I never met Roger Moore. I once loitered outside one of his homes because where I went and did my postgrad was in Exeter. And there's a beautiful place called Topsham just to the side of Exeter on the coast where he used to have one of his weekend homes. And,
nice.
Kind of, as a student would, take my time walking past his bay window just to see if I could see him. But I did meet quite a few times, who was named a massive Roger Moore fan, was not a massive fan of a lot of people, was a massive Roger Moore fan, was Tony Curtis. And Tony Curtis was a brilliant interview. I interviewed him a couple of times, had breakfast with him once, because he got to that point in his life where he just didn't care. He would say anything and he would be extremely candid. And so it made him extremely entertaining company. But somebody about whom he was always incredibly positive and complimentary was Roger Moore, and somebody who, Curtis really loved working on The Persuaders. He loved that entire project. He was very, very proud of it,
Yeah, I think they did have a good relationship, and I think Tony Curtis has his reputation for whatever. But I think the feeling was quite mutual. I think there was great affection, and I can totally see that. Roger is just a very genial. He's exactly the sort of person you'd want to be in a collegiate situation with, and just the little details. He just always kind of went the extra mile. I remember, once he sent me a birthday card that said, and here's to many, many more with a double O in it, and you're just like, that's not going in the bin. That's going in my desk drawer forever. I'm so excited, and he just knew how to make other people feel good. Absolutely mind blowing when I kind of look back to it now. And I ended up doing the tribute to him on Radio 2, hosting that and interviewing his co-stars and family members, and writing up a piece for the Mail on Sunday about him as well. And I just couldn't really believe it. And I remember when I heard he died, I was crossing Haymarket on the way to interview Sir Michael Parkinson for a glass with. And my brother, who is another massive fan of Rog, just texted me and said, have you seen the news? Rog has ascended to the great ski chalet in the sky. And I just thought, I just can't. I couldn't let myself go then and there, because I was about to interview someone. And that was, Sir Michael Parkinson obviously knew Roger Moore, and we had a little chat about it. And then that night I had to write the tribute for the Mail. And then it wasn't until really very late that evening that I kind of really just melted into a realization of what it all meant. And it was a really, really sad day for me. And I always remember him so fondly, though. What an absolute dude, because it could have all gone to his head and it didn't. That's just the loveliest thing. He was just absolutely there for everyone. Just, crack on, let's do the work and have some fun.
It's so wonderful to hear that perspective about him. And mate, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to give me a few in the moment wine recommendations.
You've got to do it. You've got to do it. Now, what do you normally drink? What's your normal tipple? Are you a red or white wine?
So basically, when it comes to, I'm a fan of both. When it comes to red, I'm a big Cabernet Sauvignon fan.
Love that.
And when it comes to white, I'm a big Chardonnay fan. So I love Chardonnay, love Chablis.
Well, I think for Chardonnay and Chablis, I'm going to give you two options. My off-the-beaten-track option is to try Greek Assyrtiko, if you haven't already, either from the island of Santorini or from Crete. It's basically quite a chiseled diamond of a wine, but it really reminds me of Chablis. Different grape, obviously, different country, but really minerally soils. And I'm a big fan of Greek wine because there's a lot of smaller boutique producers, a lot of organic production. They don't really have, those great big brands that we know and love from other countries. But there is one I can recommend to you specifically that is for sale currently in Aldi called Petra, and it's it's Aspra Petra, and it's $6.99, and it is an amazing Assyrtiko. And I tasted it; it got sent to me by the person who's kind of backing it, and before it had hit the shelves, I was like, okay, this is one of the great white wines of the world. And immediately just needed to find out everything about it. So I kind of rummaged around and it kind of had a Aspra Petra label on the back. And I'm like, okay, but who's making it? And I dug and I rummaged. And eventually I found out it's this guy who I know at Alpha Estate called Angelos Iotrides, they're just a brilliant outfit. And they are making some of the greatest wines in Greece. And to find it on the shelves in Aldi for $6.99, Aspra Petra. It is just ridiculous. I shall send you a link so you can put it in the show notes.
Please do, brother.
And my other Chardonnay recommendation is you've got to try English Chardonnay. There's some really good ones out there. Still wines, everyone knows about the fizz, but in general, I think the still wines are going to really come on in the next few years. But I'd say certainly off the bat for your white wine, my top recommendation, Aspra Petra from Aldi, Greek white, $6.99. You cannot go wrong. Brilliant. And I want to know how it was as well. So for reds, you like a Cabernet, I'm very happy to give you a good Cabernet recommendation, or I can kind of give you if you like Cabernet, try this.
That's what I'm looking for, mate.
Well, I think so. Have you drunk many Cabernet Francs? Franc is...
I have, and I do like it.
Okay, well, we'll move on because if you've already found it, we could spend a lifetime doing this. Yeah. I think Portugal for me would be the place to go. And there's the Douro Valley is very famous for port, and there are some very good Douro red blends, which if you liked Malbec, I'd be saying, well, try them. But actually from a place called the DAO, their red wines, particularly from Touriga Nacional, are absolutely stunning. And they're not, Cabernet Sauvignon can be quite hefty. It can be thick-skinned and powerful, like a blackcurrant crossed with a Rhino. But these wines, they're all of that, but they're sort of lithe as well. So a winemaker I particularly like is Julia Kemper, and she makes these incredible DAO wines. Now, if you're Cabernet and you want to spend a bit of money but not go crazy, that's where you want to spend it.
Fantastic, mate. Thank you so much. That's brilliant.
Oh, you're frozen.
On my back now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see and hear you again.
Good. Yeah, you froze a bit. Well, we're good now. Are we completely interactive? Oh, that's interesting. Yes, okay, I've got you again, mate. Right, fantastic. So we are sprinting towards the end of our time together. Now, I know you're in our closing minutes. I know you're a big genre fan, Olly. How about just name checking some of your favourite movies and TV shows for me?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I listened to The Sopranos recently, and you couldn't find a less likable bunch of people. And yet, it does seem that there's an enduring kind of a... Yeah, perfect. So I'd say for TV, I do love a kind of a really good serial. I think, The Sopranos I delighted in. At the moment, I'm slightly obsessed with Alan Partridge. I think Steve Coogan's, he's got that nailed. I really like that. And in terms of movies, again, I'm kind of old school. I do love sci-fi. I really love sci-fi. So anything, Blade Runner, Alien, all that, I kind of get in great enjoyment. But, give me Gil Gerard, Buck Rogers in the 25th century, and I'm anyone's. That is a great series. Yeah. And I love the movie that kicked it all off. And sadly, we talked about this the other day, and we had lunch with Tweaky's gone.
Tweaky's gone.
Yes, exactly. No. Exactly. Tweaky's gone, sadly. So I think anything sci-fi for movies, and basically anything, I do love quite kind of grim, organised crime.
Me too, mate. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of organised crime. Noir crime is a big thing.
Yeah. Like what was that? Ray Liotta, was it called Narc in that movie?
Oh, man. Yeah.
What a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, any of that. Oh, yeah, love it. Love it. Absolutely love
Brilliant.
it. Casino, you know, Goodfellas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, yes, absolutely right. Great choices. Two great choices. And unflinching portrayals of violence in both of those films as well.
Yes, I know. And here we are, quite nice fellows, you know, reveling in just, you know, the awfulness. But there it is.
Watching people being baseball batted into oblivion.
It's terrible.
Buried alive.
I don't know why I can watch it. I can't really watch it, but I do. I don't know why. What am I doing?
It is beautifully grim and a big hard agree from me. And I'm Andrew Sumner, and I've been in conversation with the one, the only Olly Smith. What a fantastic hour, mate. Such a great opportunity to just chat for a while. I've really enjoyed it, mate.
I've loved it. Thank you for having me. Just any time, seriously. And must have lunch again.
Oh, well, I'm 1,000% into that, brother. Well, we'll get it done for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Take care, Olly.
Cheers.
All the best, mate.
Loving it. Thanks, buddy.
You've been listening to Hard Agree. This episode was edited by John Horsley and Kenrick Regan, and our theme music, Golden, was written and performed for this show by Liverpool's finest band, Denio. Hard Agree is a production of the Spoilerverse and myself, Andrew Sumner.